So, there is a lot of talk about the Kennedy assassination and the CIA and all that stuff right there, and I'm pretty sure that YouTube just found a way to keep this video from getting out any further than what it's probably going to get out. Now, guys, I have told you guys before, and we'll be getting on this topic, and this is not a project on the Kennedy assassination, just some very, very quick thoughts to kind of get your minds engaged, okay? The other night, Tucker Carlson, he did a nice little spiel. I'm going to play a little bit of it for you in a second, then we're going to play some more of it periodically about this video about what exactly the CIA knew in regards to the Kennedy assassination. Now, I've told you guys before on this channel, I've let it be known. I want to make sure I say that the right way because sometimes the words can come off a little bit off-putting. I apologize for that. That I do not think that Oswald did it. I also do not think that Kurt Cobain committed suicide. I've also said that there's some conspiracies that I do believe and some that I quite frankly don't. Now, this video is not a project designed to overlook the entire Kennedy assassination or look at the entire thing. This right here is to talk about what Tucker Carlson uncovered and, of course, to give some personal thoughts on the actual assassination itself and just giving you the reasons why I don't think that Oswald did it. Now, guys, with that right there being said, let's go ahead and play this first clip and let's come on back to it.
It's one thing if you get struck by lightning, rare but possible. But if every member of your family also gets struck by lightning all on different days, you might begin to suspect these are not entirely natural events. But oh, replied the U.S. government, they are. This bizarre chain of killings was all entirely natural. So less than a year after the JFK assassination, the Johnson White House released something called the Warren Commission report. And the report concluded that while their motives remained unclear, both Lee Oswald and Jack Ruby had acted alone. No one helped them. There was no conspiracy of any kind. Case closed. Time to move on. And many Americans did move on. At the time, they had no idea how shoddy and corrupt the Warren Commission was. It would be nearly 50 years before the CIA admitted under duress that, in fact, it had withheld information from investigators about its relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. But even then, at the time, before that term conspiracy theory entered our lexicon. As Professor Lance DeHaven Smith points out in his book on the subject, the term conspiracy theory did not exist as a phrase in everyday American conversation before 1964. In 1964, the year the Warren Commission issued its report, the New York Times published 5 stories in which conspiracy theory appeared. Now today, of course, the term conspiracy theory appears in pretty much every New York Times story about American politics. It's wielded, now as then, as a weapon against anyone who asks questions the government doesn't feel like answering. But despite 60 years of name-calling, those questions have not disappeared. In fact, they have multiplied with time. And here's one of them. In April of 1964, a psychiatrist called Louis Joylan West visited Jack Ruby in his isolation cell in a Dallas jail. According to West's written assessment, he found that Jack Ruby was, quote, technically insane and in need of immediate psychiatric hospitalization. Those are conclusions that, puzzlingly, no one who had spoken to Jack Ruby previously had reached. Ruby had seemed perfectly sane to the people who knew him. Louis Joylan West pronounced him crazy. But what West did not say was that he was working for the CIA at the time. Louis Joylan West was a contract psychiatrist for the spy agency. He was also an expert on mind control and a prominent player in the now infamous MK-Ultra program, in which the CIA gave powerful psychiatric drugs to Americans without their knowledge. So of all the psychiatrists in the world, what in the world was this guy doing in Jack Ruby's prison cell? The media did not seem interested in...
I do not doubt for one second that the CIA was involved, and I'll be giving you my reasons a little bit more periodically in this video once we've watched the rest of this, which I'm going to roll for you guys here in a second. Now, let me go ahead and say this. I think that trust in American institutions has been going down since before the Kennedy assassination. I would argue that it was going down probably as, I would say, as early as the start of the 20th century. I mean, you had all kinds of things going on, especially in the political field. You had a silver panic late in the century. You had a Spanish-American War that a lot of people were not entirely on board with, or they were on board with at that time, but then again, later on, they were not as on board with. You had a lot of things that happened. By the way, I'm not saying I was against the Spanish-American War or would have been at that time. I'm just saying that a lot of people eventually grew to kind of dislike that. They started to believe right around that time right there that their government was not exactly as clean as they thought it was going to be. Kennedy assassination, I think, was just the cherry on top. We saw it actually happen right out there in broad daylight. And people, of course, have questioned the government ever since. People question 9/11. I mean, people question, like I said, people question a lot of things from our government, MK Ultra, all that stuff. By the way, that'll be coming up in this segment here, the rest of the segment. But the fact of the matter is, if the government's not honest about anything, then guess what? People are not going to trust you. Which is also weird, too, because a lot of people have also brought up the point that, well, if the government is so powerful, then why did they not say that they actually did it so that way people would know not to cross them? Well, in America, we have freedom, or we have the illusion of freedom, and they need to maintain that, at least for people at home. Of course, if you're wearing a uniform, you go overseas and you come back home, you have to live at the behest of the VA. It's not as easy as you think. Some people, situation dictates, and you find out very, very quickly that you're not as free as you thought you were. As a matter of fact, you were actually freer in the 1990s under Clinton and Republicans controlling Congress and the Senate than what you are now. Now, guys, we're going to roll the rest of this, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you my reasons why it is that I don't trust anything that the federal government says at this point in time about the Kennedy assassination, and I'm going to give you guys my personal thoughts. But now you guys understand why it is that people don't have much trust in our institutions.
But under intense pressure from CIA Director Mike Pompeo, withheld in the end thousands of pages of CIA documents. Today, this afternoon, the Biden administration did exactly the same thing. That would be thousands of pages of documents after nearly 60 years, after the death of every single person involved. But we still can't see them. Clearly, it's not to protect any person, they're all dead. It's to protect an institution. But why? Well, today we decided to find out. We spoke to someone who had access to these still hidden CIA documents, a person who was deeply familiar with what they contain. We asked this person directly, did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? And here's the reply we received verbatim. Quote, the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake. It's hard to imagine a more jarring response than that. Again, this is not a, quote, conspiracy theorist that we spoke to. Not even close. This is someone with direct knowledge of the information that once again is being withheld from the American public. And the answer we received was unequivocal. Yes, the CIA was involved in the assassination of the president. Now, some people will not be surprised to hear that. They suspected it all along. But no matter how you feel about or what you thought about the Kennedy assassination, pause to consider what this means. It means that within the U.S. government, there are forces wholly beyond democratic control. These forces are more powerful than the elected officials that supposedly oversee them. These forces can affect election outcomes. They can even hide their complicity in the murder of an American president. In other words, they can do pretty much anything they want. They constitute a government within a government, mocking by their very existence the idea of democracy. As cynical as we have become after 30 years of watching government officials ignore the voters who employ them, we were shocked to learn this. It's not acceptable. Americans have trusted their government less with every passing year since the killing of John F. Kennedy. Maybe this is why. And people have known this for a long time. The people who knew would include every director of the CIA since November of 1963. And that list would...
Now, guys, everything that Tucker said there, very, very weird, very, very spooky stuff. Now, I want to go ahead and make this point very clear before I start rattling off other points. And yeah, unlike Tim Pool, I'm not afraid to pull my hat off. Here's the deal. All right, and this right here has got to be said. Conspiracies. Some of them, okay, I don't buy it, and some of them, of course, I do. Okay, now I want you to think about something really quick. Just because it's a conspiracy theory or just because it's a conspiracy does not mean it's true or not true. You see, I'm of the mindset that every single conspiracy, as wild as it may sound, needs to be investigated for the sole purpose that we need to either A, debunk, or B, actually put stock into and actually investigate and see what's actually true and what's not. My favorite one is the QAnon crowd. You see, being a conservative, you automatically get accused of being QAnon. I watched the fall cabal back when it was legal, back when it wasn't banned. By the way, I don't believe in banning things like that right there. I just think it's kind of, why the hell would you ban it? I mean, it makes you look guilty. I mean, even if it's not true, it makes you look guilty for having it banned. Just figure I'd throw that out there. I watched it, believed maybe 2/3 of it, watched it again, and I came to the conclusion that that was a psyop designed to keep the base intact And then I looked at something that Sticks Hexenhammer said and actually watched his points, and I was like, it's very, very possible that the entire thing could have been just great big giant Democrat psyop. Don't worry, we'll be talking about that more in other projects. But there are a lot of things that, quite frankly, are good old-fashioned common sense about this entire situation that maybe might would lend people to believe that this entire ordeal was not exactly what we call pure and innocent, that it wasn't just one person. You see, when you have a guy like Jack Ruby, who was actually a Dallas bagman, or a bagman for the Dallas mob, go into a police station and shoot the guy that apparently shot the president on national television, you're probably going to be questioning the validity of the story. Now, guys, I had to write these down because if you really and truly look into the Kennedy assassination, it is a web of all kinds of rabbit holes. Now, me personally, I somewhat subscribe to what Jim Garrison had uncovered. Of course, Garrison, he was the meat of the movie JFK, and of course, Oliver Stone was done this stuff since. But I think that the person who actually nailed it on the head was a gentleman by the name of Jim Marrs. Jim Marrs is a documentary called Crossfire. I think I read one of his books, and I think I read the books High Treason 2. There's also the book Magic Bullet, and there's also the book On the Trail of the Assassins, which, by the way, was the meat of the movie JFK. And I came away with a different, I just came away, like I said, you have all these conspiracy theories, whatever. You got to go through and see which points make sense and which points do not make sense. I'm going to go ahead and rattle off some now. Now, guys, I went to Dealey Plaza back in the fall of 2019. I've talked about this on several occasions, that I went to go see the Packers play the Cowboys with a relative of mine. I don't mention who the actual relative is or the actual relation for security purposes. But we went to Dealey Plaza. And I was shocked at how small it was. Took a bunch of pictures, and of course, I put them inside of a hard drive and can't get them out. Very, very weird, but it's not that weird. It's probably my own incompetence. But let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. I have a hard time seeing a man rip off 3 rounds with pristine accuracy from an Italian bolt-action Manica Carcano rifle. Very, very bad shoulder weapon. Also, something else too people need to consider is that there was a tree obstructing Oswald's view as Kennedy was coming down. Now, speaking of Dealey Plaza, Elm Street actually goes down, like it kind of like goes down like this right here. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, this is not an impossible shot. However, if you've got a tree obstructing your view from the school book depository, it's a very, very small area. It would be very unlikely for you to be able to shoot a moving target, especially one that's actually crossing with the tree in its way. However, the picket fence and the grassy knoll is there, and I think that the kill shot actually came from the picket fence behind the grassy knoll, which is basically what I'm talking about. Because Kennedy, if you watch the Zapruder film, and now there's just people out there who say stuff that like, oh, he was shot in the head with a pistol from the driver. I don't buy that one because the video evidence they claim they have is a little bit too murky. Until I see something definitive, I don't buy that. Also, something else too you have to understand about Kennedy is that when he was shot, and I'm going to try to do the best I can here, where Kennedy was hit at, he was hit mostly, it leads you to believe that he was hit right here. All I know is that when Kennedy was like, and you guys can watch the Zapruder film, when he was on, because remember the first bullet actually went through here and came out of his throat, or his trachea. When it hits him here, he goes back and to the left. Back and to the left. Now, if I got hit right here, as some have suggested, and it went out this way here, then I would have more than likely done this here, or I'd go forward. Common sense stuff. Really quick, the vast majority of people who believe that Oswald did it, most of them have got no actual experience with gunfire. They've never actually picked up a rifle and held one. They've never actually fired one. My personal favorite is a relative of mine in Florida who believes that rounds can just do this, and this. Then again, though, he's also pro-gun control, extremely pro-gun control. Yet at the same time, though, he asked me about a pistol, which I thought was very, very weird. A lot of liberals are not exactly genuine about their own politics. Makes me wonder if maybe half of the Democratic Party voter base is just a bunch of grifters who just have deep down discontent for people. But I don't want this to come off as too much of a rant. Anybody factor in that Lee Harvey Oswald had what they call Maggie's draw? He was a medium shot at best. Anybody ever factor in that Lee Harvey Oswald was seen less than a minute after the assassination took place and the actual snack room, the break room, and the school book depository. By the way, the book depository did not have elevators, so he would have had to have a run down there. Police officer saw him, also the manager there. They saw him. He was drinking a Coke. Also, something else too, the clerk, she had seen him roughly a minute before the assassination eating a sandwich and potato chips. Anybody think about that? People claim they have photographic evidence of him, which, by the way, that was in Jim Morris' video. I'm not entirely sure that's him down there at the bottom while the actual assassination is going on. We don't know that. As I mentioned before, the tree is in his way. Also, something else too is that you could have shot him coming down Houston. You see, if he's coming down Houston, he lines up perfectly with the actual window itself. You fire one round, and let's just say you miss. You fire one round and you miss. Let's say the vehicle speeds up. Well, you got him for the second shot. My personal opinion is that the assassination was a triangulated crossfire, and I think that Oswald was a good old-fashioned patsy. I think he was downstairs at the time. There was obviously a shooter team at the depository. They probably fired the first round, which completely missed the motorcade altogether, and ended up going down towards the damn overpass. I think the next shot came from the Daltex building, and I think that that one right there is the one that got him right in the back of the neck. Also, something else too. People don't realize this, but Jack Kennedy was actually wearing a back brace the day of the assassination. It is possible that the book depository round hit him, and it may be possible that the Daltex building bullet is the one that went to the overpass, but I definitely think that the first two wounds here, and of course there's also the other one, which by the way came out of his throat, which was really the first one, but ultimately at the end of the day the kill shot came from the grassy knoll. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, you're missing a lot of stuff. And that's okay to think that, because I already knew that I was going to miss a lot of stuff, because it's a lot to know. For example, Oswald had been in New Orleans earlier that summer. He had gotten into it with a guy named Bringuer in an event that looked like it was staged. Of course, they had a debate, communism versus, he was basically debating a Cuban. So, anti-Castro people, and of course he claimed to be anti-Castro a week prior, but then all of a sudden he was pro-Castro. A lot of very, very weird stuff that was going on in the summer of 1963 in both New Orleans and Dallas, Texas. Now, here's my advice to you. If you really, truly want to look into the Kennedy assassination, now I'm not endorsing this, go ahead and go watch the movie JFK, watch the director's cut. Get a copy of the book, Trail of the Assassins. I'm not endorsing Garrison's views, because there were a lot of things that Garrison said that seemed a little bit, how do I say, tall-tale-ish. However, what I would advise you do is watch Crossfire on Amazon Prime. It's actually a very good documentary, and the guy is very sound. You can also look at other things to the assassination, other documentaries. But let me also go ahead and dispel another one. I just mentioned to you earlier that I felt that the kill shot hit Kennedy on the right frontal portion of his head, went through, blew out the back. There are some out there who believe that a Secret Service agent shot Kennedy from the rear vehicle. That did not freaking happen. Let me go ahead and explain why that did not happen. So you expect me to believe that a Secret Service agent pulls an AR-15 out from the back, from under the seat, gets up, which by the way he'd have to sit up, because remember the tops were off the vehicles that day. He'd have to sit up. He'd have to aim, and if you've ever fired an AR-15, back in those days, there the M16 was the old iron sight, a little bit more difficult to aim because of the circular and the front sight post. You mean to tell me that he would have to aim while the vehicle was gliding downhill and hit the President of the United States in the back of the head, but yet you expect me to believe that he was hitting the back of the head and then he still went back to the left? No, that did not happen. I saw that documentary. That documentary is on Amazon Prime. I cannot remember what the hell it is, but it's a flat-out first-rate abomination. There's no way in hell that anybody's doing that, especially in the time that was given. I believe it was 5 rounds, 5 shots, and I believe that 2 separate rounds went through Kennedy and got into Connolly, and that right there is what and Governor Connolly, because we keep forgetting about him. I think that right there is what the hell actually accumulates for the rest of the wounds. So the magic bullet theory is a bunch of bullshit. Matter of fact, I'm ashamed to call all inspector a Republican, because that there's what the hell he was. He can't later on become a Republican senator. Now, guys, you got to ask yourself a question. And like I said, this right is not a very, very comprehensive view of this. What this is just a rough guesstimate or a rough statement of why it is that I think that the man did not do the shooting. And you got to think about something really quick. So the guy who apparently shoots the president is arrested. He's arraigned. He goes out the next morning. He's carried out. And all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, a guy comes in there and shoots him. And then Ruby is arrested. And then eventually he is also silenced. A lot of the stuff really doesn't make any sense. As far as the CIA covering up, as far as Pompeo, John Brennan, every single CIA director, it doesn't surprise me. I advise you guys look into it because a lot of very, very weird stuff was going on the minute Kennedy got in office. A lot of very, very weird stuff. Kennedy had a much, much more progressive foreign policy. By the way, I'm not a Jack Kennedy fan at all. I'm just simply saying that he had a lot of things that angered the military-industrial complex and that angered the hell out of the establishment. By the way, I'm still, if you want to accuse me of being a neocon, I'll take that L because I still agree with the military-industrial complex. I don't like the way it's being managed right now. I think that we could get a lot more for a lot less. I think a lot of this crap that we're seeing with BLM and crap, I think it's just a great big giant joke. But I do agree with the military-industrial complex, except I do not agree with U.S. foreign policy. I think we need to be stocking up on weapons and be more, let's just say, more open to protecting our own here at home than across the world abroad. Like I said, I believe in making the weapons and stuff, but I don't believe in actually spreading things across the world. Excuse me. Fact of the matter is, if you look into it, if you actually just sit there and think about it and actually look at the trajectory of the bullets and everything, you'll see that there was obviously a plot in Dallas that day. It's probably been orchestrated, probably been in the works for years. I advise you guys go look at all the resources, but like I said before, just go ahead and know right now that there is no way in hell that a man is going to fire off 3 rounds from a bolt-action Mannlicher in less than 6 seconds with a tree in the way. By the way, the scope ended up being defective. We found that out. And they found a palm print. They found a palm print. A palm print. You don't have a palm print on the friggin' trigger. They found that in the friggin' they found that in the city morgue. Oh, what else was it? Oh, yeah, I'm trying to think to myself. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff, okay? And a lot of people love to sit there and say, well, he obviously could have done it. Well, like I said, most people who say he could have done it are people who never even fired a freaking weapon or even have any actual knowledge of gunfire itself. Never in the history of mankind has a bullet zigzagged around and it actually accumulated. It's actually, look, check it out. They have you think that the magic bullet goes through one body, goes through Kennedy, then goes through Connolly, stops midair, turns around, goes somewhere else. I mean, it's impossible to happen, okay? It's impossible to do. This is the reason why I encourage people, make sure you actually look into it, go into it with an open mind, look around. If you disagree with me, that's fine, that's cool. I'm just saying that I personally never, ever, at one point in time, believed that Oswald ever killed Kennedy, and I do believe that it was obviously a cover-up. And I honestly think that what the hell probably the actual, and this is where I'm going to end the video at, by the way, I think the CIA is probably the most culpable. I would also argue that the FBI, Oswald did meet with Agent John Quigley a year before the assassination, and Quigley tore up his notes. What else was it? Oh, people have said the mob was involved. Probably so, but more than likely at a lower level. I don't think the mob could get the parade route changed. I don't think the mob could hire any type of actual rifleman. I think mob may have been in charge of escape. I mean, we did use the mob in Cuba. I mean, Johnny Rosselli was used when we were originally going in there to get to Castro. I think possible exiled Cubans with possible special forces military. They're probably the shooters. I think exiled Cubans were probably the ones that were probably being set to be used in case the thing went south. That type of stuff there. I mean, there were a lot of things going on at that time, going to the Kennedy assassination that he was getting pinned for, that he was not responsible for. But there were a lot of things that were also laid at his feet that, quite frankly, there were. I'll give you one last thought. If I had been alive in the late 1960s and I received my draft card to go to Vietnam, I'd have gone. I wouldn't have been in favor of the war, but I would have gone. Would I have volunteered for it? Probably not. But then again, I did volunteer to go fight in Iraq. But I would not have been an anti-war protester or anything like that. I wouldn't have agreed with the war, but at the same time, though, I wouldn't be out there throwing dog shit at our soldiers and stuff like that when they get off the planes. I think you can actually be very, very rational about things, and I think the troops got a very, very bad deal. You'll be hearing a lot of that right there in my Rambo, my First Blood review, which will be on Gear Issue 33, hopefully sometime next month. Also, something else, too, and I have to end the video on this note right here. While I may not have been in favor of going to Vietnam, I damn sure was not in favor of allowing the Russians to put nuclear missiles in Cuba, which is 90 miles off the coast of Florida. I also am not in favor of having a communist dictator down there basically enslaving his people. In that case right there with the Cuban Missile Crisis that came up, if I had been president, I would have gone through with surgical strikes and then I would have invaded Cuba outright, because the Russians would have been taken by so much surprise that they probably would not have gotten far if they had invaded Europe or not. We probably would have beat them back. As a matter of fact, I still agree with General George S. Patton. We should have never allowed Germany to dictate any type of policy. I mean, we should have never allowed Russia to dictate policy after World War II. And I think us doing that right there is what eventually started the Cold War, and it's what the hell put us in the situations we are today. Guys, John Claymore, I know this video right here was a bit of a long rant, but I just figured I would talk about this for a little bit, just give you guys my personal thoughts. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys give me your thoughts in the comment section. It'll probably be a much more comprehensive take on this issue, probably in project form that covers all the other stuff like the globalist bullcrap and all that stuff there, what was going on in the government. Like I said, guys, give me you guys your thoughts, and I'll see you guys later.